Hey, everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Pensado's Place. We are pleased to bring you technology that you need to know about. In a minute, Michael Beinhorn and Joe Salvatto are going to go through why Equitech and balanced power are important for your process. Equitech was founded in 1992. Martin Glassman, a brilliant guy who saw an opportunity and to fix something that people weren't paying attention to, quickly became the go-to guy on how to get sound perfectly balanced, get all the electrical kind of interference out of it, and makes a dramatic difference. And now Equitech is used in recording studios, churches, universities, all kinds of stuff, but also by an amazing amount of talented people, Stevie Wonder and John McBride, and we can go on and on. You can see their list. Equitech is now run by Martin's sister, and the family dynamic continues, which means the quality and brand standard continues. But less from me and more about the users of it. Here's Joe Salvatto, Michael Beinhorn, and the conversation we had about Equitech. Joe and Mike, what's happening?
How are you, gentlemen?
Good. The interesting thing, we all have a mutual friend named John McBride who at Blackbird Studios, not only does he use a lot of Equitech stuff, but like he has his own power, because for him, the cleanliness of that and the sacrosanct use of it makes a difference in how good your audio is and what can happen with your. So Joe, you have a really interesting history and take on that kind of stuff. Tell us about balanced power and why it's important.
Well, I think the beginning for me is that when I was introduced to it, I was told, you know, the sound that an SSLJ makes when all the faders are at unity and the master fader is up and you turn the volume control up, what does it do? It goes, I don't know. Well, it doesn't do that anymore with this box. This is coming from the inceptor of balanced power, of Equitech. And I said, that's impossible. That's the sound of transistor switching. He says, no, it is not. It is a sound of common mode rejection and normal bridge rectifier systems that is in every piece of audio equipment you've ever used. From that moment, I started to rethink the way that I did installations. Being a chief engineer for a recording studio, my job is to hand the keys to the engineer. And when somebody tells me that I can turn a console on after a complete install and I don't have to worry about ground hums or any kind of infiltration from the surrounding companies, elevators, what have you, this is a game changer for me and has been for over 25 years. Wow. That's where it all comes from. Having to not have worry about these problems as a facilities is something that is paramount to the commercial recording studio or any recording studio, anybody that has a home theater that, or any place that audio is important.
Joe, how can a neophyte recognize some of these things, or is it strictly the guys like you that are in this together?
Well, how can I put this? There are different levels of expertise and people that really come to me about this. And the one factor is that nobody wants to hear buzzes and hums, clicks and pops. Everybody can hear those. You don't have to be a mastering engineer to understand that. And I believe that that's the thing that changed everything. You know, when you can ignore those possibilities at all, that's when you have something. Now all of a sudden it's kind of like having high test gasoline in a Ferrari. You really can drive the car with regular gas, but you shouldn't. And that's kind of the way it is with balanced power and having a clean power leg. What you've done is beyond anything, John, to have your own power, to have a ground plane that is something similar to that of a radar station. That's phenomenal. But the fact is that what you've done is amazing, but you don't have to do that for the common guy who's got a studio in his basement or in his garage or what have you. The Equitech comes to bring balanced power to the masses. You plug it into the wall and you plug your gear into it and things change.
What are some tips for grounding a studio?
Well, in a perfect world, you don't have to go through hoops and ladders, you can use your domestic ground that comes from your AC wall panel and just go to town with it. That's the beauty of this, John, is that you don't have to be that critical about where you get your ground from. If I had my choice, and when I do, I ignore the power company's ground, and I go outside to a outside rod or a copper water pipe or a sprinkler pipe if you're in a building. Any place to get away from the, in our neck of the woods here, Con Edison's ground, which can be contaminated with everybody's compressors and such going on.
Michael, creatively, essentially, I'm guessing this, you tell me if I'm correct. Essentially, you want things that allow you to forget about problems so you can go be creative as opposed to worrying about being a tech head. Does this check a box in that way where it takes care of noise and so on and so forth?
Pretty much every box that I can think of. I mean, my main concern is how good music sounds coming out of loudspeakers or whatever I'm listening through.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me how much of a difference a device like this distributing power to all the devices that I use in the signal chain is, and the kind of effect it has on this sort of thing. And it's funny because it's an argument that many people make. You can't really change these sorts of things. But in my experience, you can improve the power drastically, especially by paying attention to these simple things. And it's amazing to me that you can actually have that kind of a change using a box like this instead of dealing with a whole bunch of installs and things like that.
Now, one of the things you guys said earlier is that if I am Larry Jones in Arkansas and I'm cutting in my room, in my basement or in my bedroom, Equitech applies there too. I can get the box, I can plug it in and make it happen. Is that correct?
Correct.
Completely 100% applicable.
That's fabulous.
And also,
In that case, is the importance of stable power, is that the owner's responsibility or the provider's responsibility? So does the electric company take control of the quality of that? Why are you smiling? Why are you smiling, Mike? That's what I'm saying, right?
I wish in a perfect world that would definitely be the power company. But, let's be honest, like electric companies don't worry about the kind of electricity that they're sending out.
That's right.
Because they're concerned about your hairdryer and your refrigerator powering up. It doesn't, you don't need the same kind of electricity. Am I right in saying this?
Yes.
Yeah, but my main concern is 30 cycles. I like to put 30 cycles through, and sometimes it garbles.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
again, you're dealing with electricity that's contaminated, that's filthy, and that is also being the efficiency of it is being affected by everyone else's appliance. Like if, like most people now, I think in audio, your studio is in your home. Not in a facility where you can really control everything that gets into it and comes out of it. Yeah. You're at the effect and the mercy of everything that's happening around you. Like, for example, I had a studio in Venice, California, and I noticed that in the summertime, what would happen was around 5 or 6 p.m. every day, like clockwork, the sound of everything in my studio would change. I had a conditioner in the studio, like it was the entire studio supposedly was conditioned, right? Mm-hmm. But every day, the sound of everything would change. It would flatten, it would get dull, like all my nice sounding gear would start sounding crappy. And I wondered for a while, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's summer. Everyone's coming home from work and turning on their AC. Mm-hmm. And it was consistent. This is the kind of stuff that we have to deal with, especially when we're working in our homes. Where I am right now is in a bedroom in my house. That's where I do most of my listening. Yeah. And it's set up really nicely acoustically. But, if someone's using an appliance, doing anything that draws on the power that's coming to me, that's distributed throughout my area, I'm affected by it adversely.
The analogy that I used in understanding it, it's similar to what happens with Wi-Fi. If everybody comes home and they're using their Wi-Fi, my Wi-Fi slows down, or I have issues, and it's so super annoying. So for people like yourself and Dave and Joe to have your power contaminated and noisy and affected by volume and so on and so forth, that has a direct effect on the music that's coming out of the speakers. And so
Yeah, totally.
yeah, and once it was clear, I was like, oh man, like you got to have that. And the idea that there's products that
Yeah.
everyday guy can use, which, it seems to me like you need to have this.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely essential. It's a great way to it's probably the most perfect way to level it up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And also, when I've let people use an Equitech as a demo, they come back to me saying that the mixes that they've been doing, which obviously people listen to hundreds of times during their evolution of the tune, guy says it sounds different. Just having the Equitech in the chain. So this is endemic in the system. When something that you've been working on and you're very familiar with, and then the Equitech comes on, and overall there's a complete shift in the audio paradigm. And that to me is like, you can't deny that, especially if you're a professional doing your work. Yes, right. that has happened. And may I just go back one step and tell you that you talk about environmental conditions. This is a great story. I had a client that had a house up in rural Westchester in upstate New York, and he said all of a sudden he had terrible problems in the like some sort of weird gremlin that was running around. It turns out that his neighbors came home from vacation and turned their dog fence back on. Mm-hmm. Without and now he says the Equitech, the guy can stay there all day long because nothing bothers his power anymore. But something as basic as that, I said, that's crazy. But it's like Michael's saying, we all share a neutral in a conventional electrical breaker panel. You don't anymore because now with center tap isolated grounds, you don't have to worry about that.
And you know what I think is interesting? Another solution that this provides is if I'm regular guy, mixing guy, I might not know how to identify where this interference is coming from. I might not know I don't have access to a Joe or to a Michael to say it's over here, it's the dog run next door. Yeah. So let me just get the box, plug it in.
It's all good.
And it's all good. It's a one-stop solution. I don't have to be, I can be what I need to be as opposed to trying to be something that I'm not. And I think that's a real value. Are there other applications for the product besides in studio? Like, is there a live application? Does AI and stuff coming down the pipe, does that change as you look at future products? Like, or is it just this solid performer that you plug in and it does what it does?
Well, we all know that clean power has other applications. And in the biomedical profession, anybody that's using MRIs or CAT scans and those type of devices that are using power that has to be that quiescently quiet, they're also very, very, it's a great product for them. A market that we're not here to talk about, but that's how far-reaching balanced power can be. It's a complete, like Michael said, the power company doesn't care what they're sending in the wall. As long as there's 120 volts there, that's it. But with this device, with balanced power, it doesn't matter where you are. And by the way, my wife, who knows nothing about audio, asked me, so how long does it last? I says, forever? Because it's a transformer. It doesn't have any moving parts. Yeah, I've had people tell me that the on-off switch broke. Hello. So we've had to make those kind of repairs. But aside from that, it's a very, very static device that will go on and you will have it as long as you have audio.
See, I think your wife's question is right on point because it allows you to not have to think about stuff like that. You ask a few questions and go, oh, okay, it worked. Like, I now want it at home and I don't record anything. I just wanted to say I have it because my friends have it and I know my electricity's clean. So screw y'all. But and there's some interesting technical stuff. Like, what is a Q transformer? What does that do?
Oh, well, there's a son of Q and a 2RQ are just different variations on the theme.
Okay.
It's basically the same toroidal transformer that's putting out 60 volts on the left of the whole of the outlet and 60 volts on the right with respect to the ground plug. That's the way it is. The transformers do not have a Faraday shield around the outside, so they're a little bit quieter. That's really the difference. If you look on the inside of a 2RQ, it's got what looks like a belt around it, and that goes to ground. So that's a very, very finite difference. However, balanced power is balanced power.
Yeah.
The cable you take to ground, what describe that? The one in between the 260, the plus 60 and negative 60, that cable in between. How does that?
That's the third hole on a conventional 120 volt outlet. That just goes from there to the center tap of the transformer. It then picks up its ground from wherever it's told to. In this case, it's the wall. It's wherever you plug in your device.
I see a lot of copper grounding wire with no cover. It's just bare. Is that good or bad?
It depends on the situation. Now we're getting into the weeds here. But the thing is that 80% of anything that anybody does on an Equitech installation will be very, very similar in all aspects. If you want to get that last 20%, well, then we have to talk. And then we have to be a little bit more specific about the way we get the ground. And it's not for this conversation, but I'm glad to talk to anybody that wants to call me and ask me about it, because there's a lot of very, very simple ways to get away from the power company's ground and go directly to your cold water pipe. Maybe the electrical inspector wouldn't want to talk about that too much, but the fact is it's still ground is ground, and they can't dispute that. So, but right. Yes.
So you're going in the box itself? You're going into the...
No, I do it inside of another box before it gets to there. So, in other words, I'm looking at it right now, trying to visualize it. It's a plug, and then instead of the ground wire coming from there, I separate it out and go to a copper water pipe. And now all of a sudden, the ground does not come from the power company. I don't advise this for the average person. This is something that is for somebody with some engineering skills. It's perfectly safe to do it, but in the sense of the word, it's not. You don't have to. I'm telling you.
I think that is part of the important construct of this story. You don't have to go be technical and be crazy.
Don't
box. Plug it in, get to popping. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because all the rest of that is cool, and Joe and Jan and the team there have taken care of that.
Correct.
You hook your thing up. Michael, I also want to get a sense of what you're doing, but I think sometimes if I could just take a moment and just let folks know that sometimes you're defined by the company that you keep. If you look at Equitech, in their post and film stuff, it's Warner Foley Studios, Skywalker Sound, Sony Post. The artists that use their stuff: Foo Fighters, Tom Cruise, Keith Urban, Stevie Wonder, Mike Dean, John Mayer, Herbie Hancock. The list is ridiculous. Ozzy Osbourne, Lenny Kravitz, on and on and on. Recording studios that you know of: Blackbird, The Plant, Ocean Way, studio after studio, Atlantic Records, and then a million badass producers, including Michael Beinhorn, Bud John McBride, and Jason Joshua, No ID, Bruce Swedien, God rest his soul, Phil Ramone, and on and on and on. And these are all people who take what they do super seriously. And to have that illustrious of a list of people means that there's something about this that makes their shit better. Period. Dot. So Mike, in your prolific, voluminous way, what are you working on? What are you using Equitech to bring to us in the future? I know you're on some hot shit.
Thank you for saying so. Apart from the stuff that I'm doing at home, I've got 2 records in production right now, and actually, they're both being powered courtesy of Equitech. So
There you go.
there you go. Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah, no, it's nonstop, and having that kind of equipment. It's so funny about this though, because like one of the very thing that you described, the simplicity of this product, I think is the very thing that makes it unsexy to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because there's this fetish of knobs and buttons and and sliders and things that do this and multi-functions, and you've got this like box with a light on it and, a couple of switches and a readout and nothing more. And it's like, what can you do with this thing?
Right.
People just see it and they go like, but I can't, it won't change anything. And not until you stick it into your circuit and see what it does to the sound.
Yeah.
When you hear your transients rushing at you like this and hear expanded low end, expanded upper range, more depth of field, that's one of the most exciting things to me. And that's really what makes it so great to work with for me.
Mm-hmm. Well put. And I tend to share, coming from the non-technical side, but, deeply immersed in the audio space, we often talk about it's genius to be simple. It's not to be complicated. Like most people, like the best of the best, like Michael Beinhorn and Dave and others, they figure out how to take their art, and then when we receive it, it seems simple. It wasn't simple for them to get it there, but they understood that was the goal. That mix needs to be simple, or that song needs to be, that hook needs to be simple. And technical people, to your point, often think, no, simple's not good. I need some deep shit to do. No, you don't. No, you don't. Get to the art. And I find that what also I think is interesting is that the way Joe and the team at Equitech and Jan, those guys, have constructed a product that works through all the technical evolutions that we go through all the time in the business. If AI comes or gaming comes or you're working at home or whatever the newest thing is, this box just keeps on doing its thing. And you all worry about that shit. We're going to have balanced power, and it's going to be clean, and it's going to sound better no matter what we do. That's that simplicity genius thing that we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, the reality is everything that we do relies on electricity. We can't get away from it.
Yes.
You cannot make a recording without electricity. And with computers now, it's even more clear. You want, with that in mind, it's absolutely detrimental to keep your power as clean as possible.
Yeah. Joe, let's pretend I'm an average Joe. I don't know anything about anything. I walk into my room, I plug in. What am I supposed to listen for so that I can understand that I need to get your product?
Lack of hiss in the speakers. Right away, you'll notice that there's a noise floor drop immediately. Well, and to the point that some people have told me when they've installed their Equitech, they've almost blown speakers out because they didn't realize that the volume control was at 4:00, but they didn't know it.
Great. Wow, good answer.
With Michael on, one of the interesting things I think at some point in time in the future is to get some studios and other users of it that have different applications, like Foley or AD or whatever it may be, and just to see what their experience with it is, because there's just so many applications. The biomedical application I think is fascinating, and partially because we've done a show, we haven't aired it yet. We did a show on audio at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. They have an audio department. They control sound in the operating room, in the studios. In the hallways, and control. And they have like a staff of 4 or 5. But and we were like, oh my God, we need to cover that, let alone using ultrasound for nuclear and other kinds of things. We're in places that people don't think we're in, which means I tell people all the time, there's no silent place on earth, which means you can take your skills, and if you just think that way instead of this way, you can find the application for it. And that's what we're talking about right here, in my view. Michael Beinhorn was one of our early guests on Pensado's Place as we were launching this thing.
Yeah.
And, he helped power it forward, and we're now in our 13th year and 580 some odd episodes. And so, Michael, just want to thank you for believing in us early, and we're here.
Yeah.
And then to Joe.
Thank you.
Oh no, man, it's an absolute. Dave and I are constantly flabbergasted at how much we continue to enjoy this and the luxury that we have. And then for Jan and Joe and Chris Flynn and the folks at Equitech, meeting new friends who are badasses is always what makes this stuff work for us.
You guys are pretty amazing.
And vice versa. I know Michael's got to jump and do his thing. We want to get him to where he's going, because I'm sure it's going to have balance power involved wherever he's going, even if it's to lunch.
Every day.
Joe, any parting shots from you that I think are important?
I think that everyone should try this. If anybody has the wherewithal to be able to spend a couple grand on a microphone or a couple grand on a compressor or something, and they don't do this, it's a disservice to their craft. This is where it begins. Balance power is the beginning of the equation. Everything else is what you make of it.
Good point. And the price point is important. Team, gang, family, go to their website, do some research, bounce around. There's plenty of information there. Because if this helps your stuff be better, and it's that simple, this becomes indispensable. You need to do this. And you see the pros that I talked about earlier that have done it. You see Michael, you see the producers, the artists, the studios. There's a reason they're doing it. And that's where you want to be. You want to be those guys. So sometimes you emulate success by copying it. You don't have to figure it out yourself. Right, guys? You agree?
Absolutely.
Yes.
We have been blessed with the incredible talent of Michael Beinhorn. It's good to see him. When in LA, we got to get together, bro. There's a bunch going on.
Absolutely.
I look forward to it. Joe, you're the man.
Thank you so much. Much.
Absolute pleasure. So without further ado, Dave, we got it in, we got it done.
Yeah. By the way, it actually makes your toast sound better, taste better when you get one.
Okay, so there's an application we never knew.
Don't plug your power.
The toaster up here.
Only audio gear.
Thanks, guys. Folks, hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next week.